Hey everybody, this is Filter Starcraft, and I thought I'd make this video just to kind of be the first part of the series where I show you how to gear up your Barbarian, starting in Act 1 Inferno, and working through Act 2 and Act 3 and Act 4. Be able to gear up, still have a bit of fun. You can see my skills in my hotbar there. So to start this off, the first thing I'm going to do is log out, and kind of start it from scratch here. So what we're going to do is just hit switch hero here. We're going to create a hero, and we're going to make ourselves a demon hunter. And that is how we're going to farm up gear for our barbarian. What's that? Starcraft. Can't remember anything, but what's that game? I love that game. Yeah, definitely. Hold on, let me get into Starcraft here. Hey everybody, this is Filter Starcraft and welcome to episode number 3 of my Zerg Bronze to Master series. This episode's been a little bit delayed, and part of that is because of Diablo, part of that was because I got a little bit sick. Don't worry, we're going to trench through it, and we're going to start putting out all these episodes really quick here, because I got a lot of really good ideas, so definitely look forward to a lot of good stuff coming up. If you're watching this and you're not used to the delay because you got into it a little bit later, hey cool, no worries, you don't have to worry about that. Now this particular episode is going to be based around kind of Silver League play and starting to build up a better foundation. The initial bronze level build can actually carry you through silver, through gold, through bronze, obviously, and even possibly through platinum. But we need to add a little bit of variation to that and a little bit more to it to keep it safe against certain kinds of attacks so that we're not dying to things like Hellions and Banshees and that kind of garbage. If we can survive the first 8 minutes of the game and hit our 60 drone mark, we're going to be free to do whatever we want. Take a third base, make infestors, make broodlords, whatever, it doesn't matter, we're going to have that freedom. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and kind of setting ourselves up for the later game here. And the last thing I'm going to mention for the introduction is that I know I talked a little bit about timing your Lair and Roach speed and getting upgrades. Here I'm going to be very specific about the timings for those things because they're really important. If you're missing your Lair timing by 2 minutes, that kind of stuff, you're going to have a little bit of trouble. So we're going to talk a lot more about that in terms of specifics. And then in our next video we can start talking about, you know, third bases and creep spread and that kind of stuff. Get a little bit more fancy with it. So I think Zerg will probably be a faster progression than Terran was because Terran, the fundamentals of Terran are quite complicated and you have to slowly piece them together. With Zerg, it really comes down to your injections and making drones as soon as you possibly can, not delaying them and spending your larvae, that kind of stuff. That takes time to master, but it's a very simple concept to kind of get used to. Whereas with Terran, you're talking about, you know, 3 or 4 different production buildings, your upgrades are totally different, everything's really kind of strange and foreign. You can't just take a third base with Terran and then make 30 drones. It doesn't work that way, it's a little bit different. Progression should be a little bit faster with Zerg, but definitely should be pretty cool. So let's jump into the episode here. The game in the background is a ZVZ that I played. My opponent is not too bad, but he makes a few mistakes. His injects were a little bit off, his macro wasn't that good, but he did try to take a third base and stuff like that. Did have to micro a little bit because he had a better composition with the Hydras in there. I did have better upgrades than him, so that's the game you're going to be able to see in the background here. Now the first thing I'm going to talk about is that first evolution chamber timing. The reason I want to talk about that is you want to use that to SimCity, especially against Terran. But you can also SimCity against Zerg with it if they're doing a lot of Baneling Ling play and you're trying to go Roach. Definitely going to help yourself out like that. So, assuming you get your natural hatchery down at 2 minutes and 40 seconds, the creep is going to be extended to the point where you can plant that evolution chamber at around 6 minutes. That's assuming you don't make a creep tumor. So just the natural creep from your hatchery is going to extend to the kind of the front of your ramp where you can SimCity at about 6 minutes. So that's when you want to start looking to plant that evolution chamber, because Hellions are not going to really be a problem until just after that 6 minute window. As long as the evolution chamber is kind of down at that point, you should be ready to go. If you see a lot of Hellions, you can plant a second evolution chamber at that time too, but we don't want to worry about using it just yet. We're only using that first evolution chamber for SimCity, so that's a really important thing to remember. Just get it down, get it right at the front of your ramp, make sure it's kind of creating a SimCity with a spine crawler, and then we're going to add some extra queens in here to kind of help out. Now, with the recent Zerg buffs, queens are extremely good at defending any kind of early pressure. So we want to take advantage of that. That means we're not spending our larvae on Zerglings, we're not spending our larvae and gas on roaches too early, we can just use queens. So for this particular example, we're going to go up to 4 queens, and the reason for that is 4 queens allows us to deal with, any kind of banshee play, as long as it's not insane and like 4 banshees at once type deal. Any kind of hellion play, even like a zealot play, will help when you play against another Zerg as well, because you're going to have those extra queens for injects. He's going to have to target 2 of them down instead of just 1. However, ZVZ is a different beast. You can still kind of go with the traditional just 2 queen play, and get an extra spine crawler and work out from there. That is quite effective too. So for ZVZ, don't feel like you have to get into the 4 queens, but definitely for ZVP and ZVT it's worthwhile. So our timing on our queens is really important. We want to be ready to go when there's kind of hellions out, so that we can use our queens to block off the hellions, and then down the road in future episodes we're going to use those for creep spread as well. Well, what you want to do is at about 5 minutes and 30 seconds, you're going to start having the money to make 2 extra queens. You want to get into them as soon as you possibly can, but pay attention to your larva pops and how much supply you have, because those queens are going to eat up the supply a little bit. What I mean by larva pops is if you have 300 minerals but you have 4 larvae about to pop, don't make one of the queens. Make sure you're getting that larva spent into drones, and then get the queen after. You don't need to be super crisp at 5 minutes and 30 seconds, but the queens should definitely be started by 6. If they're not started by 6 minutes, you're not going to have them in time for banshees, and you're going to have a much harder time dealing with players that are reckless with their hellions and just running them by. The whole point with Zerg is that as you get to a higher and higher level, players are going to be a lot less reckless with their hellions. So if in Gold League a guy sends 6 hellions into your base and kills half your drones, but you know that it was a really bad idea, he didn't have any knowledge of what was behind there and you just kind of threw them away, that's okay. You can just kind of write that game off as an example of a player who's just too aggressive, because as he gets up to a higher league, Zerg players are going to start having things behind to deal with that. Our whole focus here is to try to be a little more economic aggressive and not worry too much about those hellions, and rely on our opponent being a good player and not trying to suicide them in. So with that being said, as long as your hellions as long as your queens are out by kind of 6 minutes, you should be in good shape, or at least started by 6 minutes. Once they're started and you get the queens, both of them pop out, make sure you drop a couple creep tumors and connect your main and your natural. That's going to let you move your queens around really quickly. I like to keep the 2 extra queens on their own hotkey, so I use hotkey number 2 for them, so that I can quickly spread creep with them when the game gets a little bit later on. But for now we want to focus on getting them out and having them ready for defense. Alright, the next thing I want to talk about is Lair timing. If you take all your gases at 6 minutes, you should be able to get your Lair at 7 minutes. That includes the build time for the extractors. So it's really important to get that Lair started as fast as possible, because that's how your play is going to evolve in the future. For right now, we're just using that Lair to get Roach speed. Roach speed is going to help us deal with a whole bunch of different things, as well as let us be very aggressive in the mid game without too much difficulty. However, in the future, we're going to be able to transition into, infestor play, fast mutalisk play, whatever we really want off that extremely fast Lair, and it's definitely going to help us out a lot in the future. It also doesn't change too much as we get a 3rd base, so the big thing is get that Lair started at 7 minutes. That's a really big priority, and then your gas is really going to start to flow, and you're going to be able to grab, your +1/+1 upgrades really fast. So we're going to time everything purely based off our Lair here. Now the other thing you want to do at 7 minutes is start your Roach Warren and your 2nd evolution chamber. Those things should all be tied together, so you should know when you get 100 gas, you start your Lair, and then you start your Roach Warren and your 2nd evolution chamber, and you do that all at the same time. If you tie them together like that, you're not going to forget a building. If you forget your Roach Warren, you're going to die. If you forget an evolution chamber, your upgrades are going to be weak. So it's really important that you start everything at the same time, and then as you're able to, what you want to do is start +1/+1 on your evolution chambers, and then at 8 minutes you're going to be able to flip and turn into Roach play, and then at about 8 minutes 30 seconds you're going to be able to get Roach speed, which is going to let you start attacking when you get about 150 food. It actually times together extremely smoothly. Alright, the next thing we're going to talk about is +1/+1 and +2/+2. The big thing I want to mention with upgrades is they are a priority. So what that means is, to start your +1/+1, don't skip drones, but you don't want to be making any roaches yet. You probably won't be able to anyway, you'll still be in that droning phase of the game. So you really want to start that +1/+1, that's a priority over the units. Because you can, if you miss 20 seconds to get 3 roaches, it's not worth it. You can always get those roaches later, it's not a big deal. So you really want to get +1/+1 started as soon as possible, as well as Roach speed. The idea is that your +1/+1 finishes by about 11 minutes, as well as your Roach speed, which is going to let you start getting really aggressive. 11 minutes sounds like a late timing, but realistically, even a really good Terran player is only going to have 110, 120 food. Pro players even less than that usually, unless they're doing some really hardcore all-in. But in either case, you should be in great shape. So the next thing is going to be 2-2. 2-2 starts immediately. As soon as 1-1 finishes, you start 2-2. That's going to let you start powering ahead. The one thing you do want to pay attention for, maybe not in this particular game, but as you're starting to work your way up, is as you get about halfway through 2-2, you're going to want to get your infestation pit down and then get your hive. There's going to be a little bit of a gap between 2-2 and 3-3, but that's okay. There's going to be a lot going on in the game. So don't worry too much about the 3-3 yet, because you're 1-1 and you're 2-2. So it's going to win you all your games in silver. It's going to win you a lot of games in gold too. So don't worry too much about that. I'm just going to quickly touch on Roach speed. Roach speed is probably the most important upgrade, so don't forget it. But as soon as your lair finishes, start Roach speed. Your Roach speed ideally should be done between 10 minutes and 10 minutes and 30 seconds to give you a little bit of leeway in terms of moving across the map to attack or preparing an attack, or even just defending. So it's really important to get that upgrade finished as early as possible. If you're playing in a ZBZ, for instance, and your opponent finishes that upgrade first, he gets to be aggressive because you can't pull back, you can't retreat. So if he gets a better army and a better concave, you're just going to lose a bunch of roaches for free. Same thing applies for you. If you have roach speed and he doesn't really matter if he has a little bit better army, he's the one who has to be really careful, because if you start winning an engagement, then he can't retreat. There's no way for him to retreat because you have roach speed. It's a really, really important upgrade. Make sure you grab that as soon as your lair finishes. It's absolutely vital. The last thing I want to talk about is your attack. You should attack around 11 minutes. That's what's going to get you your advantage. So as long as you attack around 11 minutes, you're going to have all your upgrades ready, and you should be able to just steamroll through your opponent, especially in the lower leagues. As you get up into the higher leagues, things change a little bit, and you got to be a little bit more careful. But for the most part, 11 minutes is a really nice crisp timing to attack. To give you a perspective on what you should have by 11 minutes, you should have roach speed, you should have +1/+1, you should have 2 queens at your front, and you should have about 150 food. Alright, let's jump into the sample game here. We're going to try to hit my own benchmarks. Beyond daybreak per normal. Just send my overlord over there. I don't want to get picked off because it's just a random computer, so I guess send it over there. Last thing I want to do is lose an overlord in a sample game and not set my hotkeys properly, or my rally. There we go. Feel a little bit like Broodwar there. I had to manually send him over. Me looking for overlord on 9 per normal. Nice timing to get it. Overlord positioning is one of the coolest parts of this game, but it's also one of the more advanced parts of the game, so definitely teach it in a future episode, but for right now it's not overly important. In ZBZ it's nice to just create a train of overlords to your opponent regardless of level, so feel free to do that, but in the other two matchups doesn't matter too much just yet. You should be able to overcome pretty much anything. The reason I say ZBZ it's a little bit more important is at any level of ZBZ, if somebody 8-pulls you, there's not a whole lot of micro involved in that, so there's a fair amount, but it's not huge. But if you're completely unprepared for it, you just die. So it's important to have the overlords for that matchup, but yeah, this doesn't matter too much. So we're down my pool on 14. I like to take my 14th drone when I make it and just hockey it. So I just throw it on like hockey 1, and then I can immediately make my pool. Helps me never forget my 14 pool. I don't end up with like a 16 or a 17 pool, which can be really bad. The other thing too is when I go to take my natural here, I don't worry too much about if the opponent's trying to block me or not. If he does try to block me, so if it's Protoss player and tries to block me with a pylon, I'll just attack it with my drone and send in my links when I get them, because they come out fairly fast. It doesn't delay you too much. It hurts a little bit, but it's not the biggest thing. And I find it's a lot safer than trying to execute taking a fast third. You can do it, but you have to get an overlord over there or another drone. You have to really watch out for any kind of counter rush shenanigans that'll happen there. In control is kind of popularized that, so made an extra drone. It should have been a pair of links, but that's alright. I want to get my queen started pretty much right away here, so make our pair of links for basic map control. Start the queen up just as the overlord pops, so that'll time out quite nicely. I like to make the overlord on 16. That lets me get a pair of links and just kind of squeeze drones in, and then get my queen. Tends to time out quite nicely for me. I had a lot of trouble actually with when to time that particular overlord. There's so much you need to get, but it's all really expensive. Like, an Overlord and a Queen at that time is 250 minerals, which is a lot of money, so I feel pretty comfortable with that now. I'd also like to get my next Overlord at about 22. So, me grabbing that now. And just as that Queen pops out, expansion should be ready for drones, so let's send them over there. It's nice to just time things out in your head like that, makes your life very easy. So you can see I'm grabbing my Queen and my natural. I've already hit my inject here. And things are looking pretty good. Need to get a spine crawler, so let's grab that. I usually send about 5 drones over just so I can pull them if necessary, and they're not super vulnerable. So it works out quite well for me. We got a nice larva pop. Hit the inject. Gonna definitely be needing an Overlord soon, so let's get some of those going. And hit that inject. Get the Queen on the hotkey there. Nice and simple. So now I'm going to be looking to do 2 Queens. Basically, as soon as I get an Overlord pop, I'll be hitting 2 Queens. Those Queens are mostly for defense. Well, not mostly, they are. So I got those 2 Queens on the way. A couple drones. They should be out at the right time. You can see things start to get pretty tight with your money now, and we're going to have to be adding on an evolution chamber as well as our hatches, which is going to be quite a, as well as our gases. So let's start those gases up. Let's get them fired up. Perfect. And then after we do that, we can get our evolution chamber in place to kind of block our ramp a little bit. And it won't interrupt our drone production too much. As you can see, still have 0 larva, still hitting my injects. Things are looking pretty good. Definitely going to need an Overlord soon though. This Queen's just going to plant that down and go over there. Try to get it on hotkey. Make sure I'm not whiffing injects here. Get my drones that are required on gas. Nice and easy. Looks like I had a little bit of an Overlord shortage problem, but it's okay, you can correct that over time. Now I'm just going to camp on it, and I need to get my Lair rolling as soon as I get the gas for it. There goes my Lair, there goes my Roach Warren, and my next Evo. They're all kind of timed out together here. Let me add on some extra drones. There come the Overlords, so we can finish off our droning. Let's get the 2 evolution chambers on hotkeys here. Again, I'm not doing anything with those Queens, they're just for defensive purposes right now. Later on you can use them for creep spread. You can use them too right now if you want for creep spread. I just like to keep it simple, so not using them for that purpose right now. You can see I know I have 1 pair of links and 4 Queens, which means I can just take 10 food off that and get my drone count. My drone count is currently at 56, which is half decent, but could be better. So grab our attack, carapace, and should be able to get our roach speed basically straight away. As soon as that layer finishes, it'll be on its way. I'm going to want to switch over into roach production. So 60 drones right now is what I have. That's good. And definitely going to need overlords. It's not the smoothest I've ever had this play. Got the roach speed on the way. So roach speed should finish up about 10:30, which is good. That's what I'm looking for. Still waiting on overlords. Really bad. That's alright. Let's see if I can still kind of crash through the benchmarks here. A little bit late on a few things, but with practice that's definitely correctable. You can see one zealot's not going to do anything. Alright, slamming through my injects here. Keeping an eye on my supply. When you're doing roach production, it's not a bad idea to have kind of 10 to 15 extra supply. And just keep an eye on it every time you get a cycle of roaches so that you're not supply blocking. If you are supply blocking, you're going to have a lot of trouble. A situation like that, where I wasn't able to get those roaches out when I wanted to, if I had got attacked, I would have died. Like a good, nice, strong timing attack would have killed me, so really important to play smooth through any of that stuff. See, I need a couple more OBs. I've got some on the way, but we'll definitely need more, so let's get them going. It should hopefully all pop before my larva comes off here. See, roach speed done, 1025, not bad. Definitely nice. Alright, getting some overlord pops, and my larva pop should come up right now. Yep. And I'm going to be just short of my 11-minute goal here. 143 food. So the supply blocks are what threw me. 147 at 11 minutes. Start +2/+2. And then I'm going to attack here. And I'm just going to rally into his base, because why not? I'm just focusing on my injects with my attack. I'm not too worried about it. It's more important for the attack to be followed up with injects and roaches than it is for the attack to succeed from a micro perspective. So I'm still focusing on injects, making sure everything's smooth. You can see Overlord's causing me a problem again. Just not smooth. I can practice and iron that out though. And I will. Yeah. So we got a good looking attack here. There we go, got a nice Overlord pop. And just get the injects on the way. Things are looking pretty good. If I was smooth on all my play, I wouldn't have any of that extra money. And I'd be maxed right now. So, nice simple, straightforward game. Definitely missed a couple of the benchmarks, which I need to iron out. But otherwise, feels smooth. And actually, despite like kind of whiffing some of this stuff, I'll end up being in better shape. So, alright. So that's going to do it for this particular game. Alright, I want to talk about benchmarks now. Benchmarks are probably the most important part of any of the videos that I teach, so we're going to take a look at them here. The first thing is, at 6 minutes, we're looking for that 35 drone number. Don't miss it, you can't afford to. The next one, 8 minutes, as usual, we're looking for 60 drones. Those two are still really important, they tie everything together. If you're hitting the other marks, you're going to find problems down the road if you're not hitting the drone mark. If you're only getting 50 drones, you can probably still hit most of these benchmarks, but your overall play is going to be a lot weaker once we start adding in a third base. The reason for that is 50 drones is just under enough to saturate your two bases, so it's not quite enough, but it's pretty close. The thing is though, when you get to that 60 drone mark and you start taking a third base and then making another round of drones, you're going to be in trouble because you're just not going to have the economy you need to start supporting 3 base play. So really important there. The next thing is you want to have your 4 queens up at 6 minutes and 30 seconds. That's really important. That's going to let you deal with Hellion pressure. That's going to let you deal with any kind of Banshee pressure. A Cloak Banshee, for example, usually shows up around 7:15. You're going to be more than prepared for that. The next thing we're going to talk about is your main and natural creep. You want to connect your main and your natural by 6 minutes and 30 seconds. So again, just your 2 queens that you make extra, just drop down creep tumors, so that's going to connect your 2 bases. That's all I want to talk about for creep shred right now though. The next thing is, this is the most important part probably of the build. You want to have your lair started at 7 minutes. As long as you start your lair at 7 minutes, it's going to be up nice and early. You're going to be able to jump right into roach speed, and everything's going to set up nicely for you. The next thing I want to talk about is your roach speed. Roach speed has to start as soon as your lair is finished. That's going to give you roach speed at about 10 minutes and 30 seconds, sometimes a little bit earlier, but that's what time you want to look for. The next thing is +1, +1. +1, +1 should be finished at 10 minutes and 50 seconds, and you should be moving immediately into +2, +2. The last benchmark you want to take a look at in your games is you want to have 150 food at 11 minutes. Now obviously that is going to change a lot based on, you know, the matchup and stuff like that. If somebody's aggressive to you and you lose some units, you're going to fall behind, but that's where you want to be aiming for. 150 food at 11 minutes is going to win you a lot of games really, really easily, especially in anything platinum and below. Alright, that wraps up this particular episode of Bronze to Masters. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the questions or comments below. Definitely hit me up on Twitter or over at Team Liquid. You'll be able to find my thread in the strategy section there. Feel free to PM me if you have any questions or whatever. That's cool too. I answer everything I get through Team Liquid. Try to answer everything I get on YouTube as well. Try to answer everything on Twitter, but I'm not always perfect with it. Again, if you liked the video, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and there's lots more coming, so definitely look forward to that.